Hi all, this is Shaulish from Chennai Mathematical Institute. I teach statistics, computational finance, AI, ML, many things I do teach, but definitely statistics and finance is something very close to my heart. And I am being joined with my colleague Vikramaditya Datta from IIT Kanpur, and he has a background from economics, and he is also spend his good time on understanding quantitative finance. So, Vikramaditya, how do we take it forward?
Right. So actually, we have been collaborating, you and I, on some topics related to finance, right? And we thought of this idea about why don't we offer a course on computational finance, which will allow us to bring to table both of our different trainings and perspectives, right? So the idea is I've been teaching finance related courses uh, uh, at IIT, and you have been also been involved in computational. So the idea was to bring these two different viewpoints and to create hopefully what we think will be a very interesting learning experience for our students, right? Uh,
Absolutely.
yeah.
So, how we go ahead with this? Let us go to this, and this is sort of give us an idea that this slide that what we really want to do in this week. So, what do you think? What are we plan? What is our plan for this week?
Right. So I think rather than getting into definitions of what computational and finance and all these things is, what we want to do is immediately jump into a set of topics, right? We want to introduce a few main elements from finance that we'll be using over and over again in this course. So for example, this week we'll see example from the world of bonds and portfolio choice. And the idea is to use this as the main tools around which we organize our introduction to computational thinking, right? So that's the way you should think about this course, that this is kind of like a tour of different elements that we'll see. And the rest of the course will be about somewhat about unpacking things that we see in this week, right? So that's how I think one should approach what we are going to be doing this week.
Right. So, first thing, we will talk about bond and how to price a bond using some formulas and what are the motivations of the formulas. And most importantly, we will try to understand the time value of money, right? So that is, I think, the core concept of any finance related topic or even economics related topic, that what is the value of money and what is the time value of money. So how do you, if assume I'm a really 5-year old Shodish, so how do you teach me what is time value of money?
Right. So very interesting kind of like a question, right? So maybe perhaps I think rather than kind of trying to go over that concept in abstract, let me first introduce to our students to this one of the three central finance components that we will be dealing with in the course. The first one of which is a bond, right? So are you familiar, a 5-year-old Shorish, are you familiar with the concept of a bond?
Yes, James Bond.
Ah, James Bond. So yes, of course, you do have James Bond, but here we are talking about a financial bond, which is perhaps not as interesting as James Bond, right? So how should you think of a bond if you have not seen this concept before? So basically, I think the easiest way of thinking about it is to think it in terms of a loan, right? So I'm
Yes.
sure we have all heard of different types of loans that you have, the housing loan, kind of car loans, and so on. So think of bond as a type of a loan. And if you want to think of what actually is a loan, it's actually a type of a contract, right? So what is bond as a contract? So basically, you're going to pay an initial amount today in order to obtain this bond, right, to the entity which has issued this bond. And this can be different entities, right? You can have governments and these corporations which issue bonds. And typically the objective is to raise money. And what happens when you get access to a bond? Basically, you end up getting payments over a period of years where you are holding the bond, right? And at the end of the period that we are going to talk about, you are going to be getting back the the principle that you had also given, right? So why would investors buy them? Basically, they are kind of like considered to be a more stable source of income, right? This is why we use the word predictable here. And you want to compare this with, let's say, if you buy a stock and or an equity, right, where you don't know what's going to be the return. We'll see some elements of that, in fact, later at the end of the course when we think about bonds versus equities. But that's the idea, right?
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. So bond, I think if I have understood you, this bond is a instrument which, or a, a financial product, somebody a revenue stream, like kind of confirmed revenue stream, that
Right,
okay, I will give, if I give you this amount of something, you will pay me back with this amount in a single amount or maybe sequence of amount. Like for a pensioner,
right,
if I'm a pensioner, I would like to have some, say, 100 rupees every month, so that I can have continue my livelihood, right?
right.
So that is, for a pensioner point of view, this is a very good instrument to have, a investment put thing to have, right?
Right, right, right. So I think the other interesting points that is also there on the screen is if we compare it with, let's say, other instruments that are available to people who are making investments. So let's say equity, for example, right? Now,
Correct.
equities returns are kind of like somewhat unpredictable, right? Because they depend on whether dividends are going to pay out or not, whether share prices go up or down or not. Whereas in contrast, bonds terms are going to be kind of like fixed in writing when they are issued, right? It's not as if they are going to be changing afterwards. Of course, you may have like very sophisticated bonds, which are a hybrid of bonds and equities. But for our purpose, for this course, this is how we are going to think of a bond. And
So,
yeah.
Bikram,
Mhm.
how do you differentiate between a fixed deposit in a bank and a bond?
Well, fixed deposit is something that you're going to be keeping it in the, well, I'm thinking whether you can actually think of it as something that you are kind of like giving to a bank, right? Where you get basically money that is being paid out over time, right?
Right.
Uh, yeah, I think
So I
conceptually,
think this is a similar product. I
yes.
think it is a similar product. Only difference is, you can, if you hold a fixed deposit, you cannot turn around and give it to your cousin and say, okay, I'm, selling this fixed deposit to you, and you can go to the bank on a certain maturity date and get it back.
Right.
So fixed deposit is, contract between the investor and the bank, and you cannot turn around and sell it to a third party.
Mhm.
Whereas bond, on the other hand, you can turn around and sell it to anybody else, and that third party in a different date, on a maturity date, can go to the bank. So bank doesn't matter whom they are selling the bond. Whoever with that bond shows up on the maturity date, they will just pay the person that, whatever the coupon amount or the face value, they will just give that money to that person. So effectively, it is a similar kind of financial product, the fixed deposit and the bond, but the bond has a slightly more flexibility, that if you need a time, suppose I'm holding a bond of worth of 1,000 rupees,
Mhm.
and I need money, and suppose it is supposed to mature 1 year from today. But
Mhm.
after 2 months, I need some money to raise. So I can turn it around, I can sell it in the secondary market, and I can raise the fund. And the person who have bought, a person or organization who have bought it from me, they can, on the maturity date, they can go to the bond issuer and
Mhm.
submit the bond and get the money. So
Right.
that is the one of the advantage I think bond has, which fixed deposit doesn't give you.
Right. But that makes me think about, what would be the price at which you can sell? Do you think this is something that we would know in certainty before, or do you think this would change
No,
depending
this
on?
is an interesting question that you're asking me, because it actually, going forward, we will see the price of the bond will actually vary. And that is the where it makes it much more dynamic, because the interest rate varies, right?
Right.
So
Right.
that makes it a very interesting topic,
Right.
actually.
So just one more point, I think, before we move on. So you notice here that we say it's a promised sequence of payments. So the
Correct.
reason why it says promised is because we know that historically there have been cases, just as there are instances of loans being defaulted upon. Bonds
Yes.
are also potentially going to be defaulted upon. But in our course, I think for most of the thing that we are going to be kind of looking at, we are not going to be considered this default case. But I do want you to understand that there are cases where even governments have defaulted on the loans that they have
Absolutely,
taken.
absolutely. So yes, so basically it's the value of is the basically solvency of the issuer. If the bond is being issued by the government, we would like to think that that government will not default on their promises, right? But and that is one of the most of the secured investment we would like to think. Whereas if the bond is issued by a company may go bankrupt. So we would like to think that okay, it is still a bond, but since the issuer is not a sovereign, issuer is a company, we would like to think the default risk is somewhat slightly higher.
Right.
And but actually, I will give you a very interesting example. Imagine yourself, you are a person in the Germany in 1934, and 1000 Deutschmark bond you have bought, which is supposed to mature on say 20 years from 1934. By the 1945, the Nazi Germany, and it was a Nazi, suppose, bond, right? But the 1945, when the World War is over, the Nazi government doesn't even exist, so the bond value zero. So that means government do default, and the default risk is maybe little, maybe very small at most of the time, but sudden things can happen where big government can default on the bond as well. So there is a huge, and those risks are very small, but it can happen.
Right,
So
right. So
somebody
I
can.
think a more recent example is Argentina, right?
Argentina,
Sovereign
right?
default.
Correct,
Yeah.
correct, correct. Shall we move on?
Sure, sure.
All right. So this is one of the very interesting point that I found. One of the oldest bonds that have been found is a clay tablet bond in Mesopotamia, almost 2400 before Common Era. So this is a very fascinating thing where people effectively it is saying that it's a compressed legal spreadsheet which is tracking the quantities of grain, agricultural grain, the name of the witnesses, and the temple deity. So, temple deity is being sort of a third party you can think of who is ensuring that nobody will default. It's a formal legal mechanism. It establishes is exact. It translates to a binding tripartite contract between the two parties, and the temple deity is ensuring that nobody will default. The temple is ensuring that nobody will default. So the temple is the third party guarantees, provide the third party guarantees for the borrower's default risk. One of the fascinating, which we think that these are the common modern ideas. Apparently, this was happening 2400 before Common Era. That means almost 4400 years back in Mesopotamia.
Certainly
So,
older than James Bond, right?
yeah, yes. All right. So now we are in the serious business of what is bond, right?
Right.
And what are the major five features of a bond?
Right. So this is where we are getting closer to what we discussed about, how should we think of a price of a bond, right?
Correct.
So five elements that we are going to need. There are other details also, but these are the 5 that we kind of care about most for now. So one is going to be this face value, right? You can also think of it as the par of the principal. And this is the reference amount, let's say, for example, 100 rupees. And this is what is going to be kind of like going to be returned to you at maturity. Just to be clear, this is not what is the price of the bond, right? So think of it as the principal that you have kind of like lent out. Now, what's going to be the coupon rate? So this is the interest that you are going to be getting, right? And the way it's quoted, one of the common conventions and that we are going to be using here is it's going to be a fraction of the face value, right? So for example, if it's 7%, we'll see in the next slide what it is going to mean in terms of a payment, but you're going to have a coupon rate which is going to be on the face value. And the payments that you're going to get before the maturity period, these are going to be called the coupons, right? Now, another thing that has to be specified is how often are these coupons going to be paid to you, right? So there can be different conventions. You can have annual payments, you can have semi-annual payments. So for example, a 7% annual interest rate paid out semi-annually means there's going to be 2 payments in a year, and this is going to be per 100 rupees, 3.50 rupees, right? So 7% of 100 is 7, and then divided by that. You're also going to have maturity, which is the final period in which this payment is going to happen. So this is the date at which the payments end. And at that point, not only are you going to get the final coupon, but also the principal, which was the face value. And the coupon dates are the dates on which these coupons are basically going to be paid. And we'll see in the example immediately, I think now, about how this is tied to the issue date and frequency.
Perfect. So let us now consider an example. So let us go to the next something. So here is an example that if we hold a bond which is a face value of 100 rupees, it receives 3.5 rupees, 3 rupee 50 paisa on each of the 2 coupon rates in every year. So basically, it's every year it pays about 7 rupees on the bond, and at maturity, it will pay the 3.5 rupees and the face value of the bond, which is 100 rupees, right? So typically, it will be like this. So if this is the date where your bond was issued, right? Then from the issuance date on the 6th month, T is here, 1 means 1 year. On the 6th month, you will get your first coupon payment, which is 3 rupees 50 paisa. And on the second payment, which is on the end of first year, you will get another 3 rupee 50 paisa. On the 18 months, you will get another 3 rupee 50 paisa. You keep doing it. On the last payment, when the maturity date, you will get 3 rupee 50 paisa and the face value of the bond, which is 100 rupees, right? The big question is, if you want to have this bond on this date and make sure these are the stream of revenue you want on these every 6 months, how much from the bank, suppose, or from the government treasury, how much you should pay here on the issuance date to either whoever the issuer of the bank. So I think that is what makes us really think about that the price of the bond. How much price you should pay for this bond, right? Vikram, you would like to add something to that?
Right. So I think let's think about this question because this is, as Shorish pointed out, this is the central question, right? So maybe if you just think from first principles, maybe first answer would be, why don't we kind of like pay out the sum of whatever we are going to get in the future, right? So suppose somebody tells you, for example, that 10 minutes later, I'm going to give you 100 rupees and 20 minutes later, I'm going to give you 300 rupees. How much do you willing to pay? You would say, okay, I'll just add up and this is at most I am going to pay that, right? Should I pay more? Probably not. I am not going to pay you 400 to get 300 rupees back in 20 minutes, right? Should I pay you less? Potentially, right? It depends on whether I think you are going to give me back the money or not. Now, this is like just, I said, within an hour's interval, right? Now think about bonds. This is in terms of 1 year, 2 year, 3 year, and we'll see later on, there are bonds that are issued for 10-year or 20-year periods, right? So here is where, coming back to Shorish's initial question that motivated our discussion, we reached the concept of time value of money, which is fundamental when we start thinking about finance, right? So why do you think, Shorish, that money is going to be valued, money in the future is less valuable compared to money right now?
This is a quintessential problem of the money, particularly modern monetary theory. What we see that every year the price what we pay for, say rice, 1 kg rice, after 1 year we will see the price increases, right? So if 1 kg rice today is 65 rupees, I am pretty sure 1 year back it was 60 rupees or 62 rupees, and definitely not 65. It was less than 65 rupees, right? So that means that this phenomena is somewhere either more or less. So that means if today I have 100 rupees, I can buy certain amount of goods. But after 1 year, in order to buy the same amount of good, I will not be able to afford the same amount of good in that same exact 100 rupees. I will need maybe 102 rupees or 103 rupees. This is the effect of inflation, what we call the price rise or the inflation. So if I keep the money in somewhere, if I in a bank, I would expect at least it should have give me a like not only give me the value of the 100 rupees back. What I am, if I keep 100 rupees after 1 year, I expect this bank to give return the 100 rupees, but also on the top of that, I want some extra money. That because if I don't get, suppose 5 rupees, I want 5 rupees. Now, if I don't get that 5 rupees after 1 year, that means, and I get only my money back 100 rupees, that means my value of my money has gone down because of the inflation, right? So we have to get some kind of value for the money, because over the time, because of the inflation, the value of money is going down. For 1 unit of money, the value, the amount of worth that we can acquire, amount of goods that we can acquire, that value is going down. So this inflation does play a very crucial role in our life. And because of the inflation, we have some sense of value of money, and that we know that because of the inflation, the value of money is going down, and that has to be taken care of as we price, as we try to see that, how much is 100 rupee worth today and how much the same 100 rupee worth 2 year, maybe a year from today.
Right. So I think we can perhaps summarize some of the reasons why we have this concept of time value of money, right? So if we
Correct.
move to the next slide, I think.
Yes.
Then we are going to see that basically you have this three different concepts that you can
Correct.
think of. And there may be other reasons, right? So one is, of course, the opportunity cost, that this 100 rupees that you get today, you could actually invest in some other places. You could keep it in a bank and you will get a return, right? So if
Correct.
you get 100 rupees in your hand today, that's definitely valuable compared to getting 100 rupees, let's say 1 year down the line. And then as you mentioned, Shorish, you have reasons thinking related to inflation. And of course, there are potentially reasons related to risk. So definitely money today in hand is better than money that you are being promised at some point in the future. Hopefully the promise will be kind of like carried out, but then there's always this chance that maybe there would be, you won't get the money in the future, right? So they have these different reasons. And what we care about, is that as a result of this, that money in the future is worth less compared to money now. And so what means is that 100 rupees today is not the same as 100 rupees 1 year down the line, right? So somehow 100 rupees today, we need a mechanism to translate it into what it means in terms of money today. And
Correct.
formally speaking, this is what is known as discounting the money, right? So we want to discount the future amount of money and find a way to convert it in what it means in today's money.
Correct. Absolutely. Absolutely. So basically, if if bank offers an interest rate of say R per year, if 1 year, 1 rupee is today, then 1 year after 1 year, it should be 1 plus R rupees, right? The same 1 rupee will become 1 plus whatever the interest payment that bank is doing. Correct?
Right.
Yeah. So,
Right.
and yeah, go ahead, go ahead.
So therefore, we can also now, flip the picture, right? So if 1 plus R in the future is what 1 today, then 1 in the future is going to be worth exactly this 1 by 1 plus R. Right?
Exactly. 1/1 plus R. Exactly. Yes.
And we can extend this also, right? So for example, 1 rupee today is 1 plus R in 1 year down the line, but that 1 plus R 1 year down the line is 1 plus R square 2 years down the line. So therefore, 1 rupee today is 1 plus R whole square 2 years down the line. So 1 rupee 2 years down the line is 1 by 1 plus R square, right? Uh,
Correct.
but you can generalize this. Now, suppose that it's like for two t years, right? So 1 rupee today is 1 plus R to the power t. So 1 rupee t years down the future, right, is 1 by 1 plus R to the power t. So this is what is known as discount factor, and this is one of the most important elements that we'll see in this, not only in this course but in finance in general, right?
Exactly. I think this is one of the most important slide in this course, I think, because this concept of discount factor we will be encountered not only in bonds, even in the equity market also, right? Because and that it is all over the finance effectively.
Right. Any asset pricing more generally, right?
Exactly.
That is what
Yeah.
we see.
Yeah.
And this is exactly this formula. It's very interesting, right? This formula, the first line that we have written, 1 rupee today is 1 plus R in 1 year. This is something we teach in, whenever we first encounter simple interest rate and compound interest
Correct.
rate in high school, right?
Even in
But
the
we never
school,
think of the opposite problem in school, which becomes
yes.
the starting point in all of finance in some sense.
Correct. Absolutely. Yes. Yes.
Uh, uh, this is what we have been discussing in terms of 1 rupee, but you can think of like 100 rupees, then this would just be 100 by 1 plus R to the power t. So more generally, any cash flow that you think in the future, you can always use this to convert. And this is what is known as the concept of
Correct.
present value, right?
Present value. So if you have a cash flow from 1 year from today, suppose this is 3.5 rupees, that what we were, if we take the example, then, and if your R is like, maybe 5% or something, then basically 1 plus 0.05, divide that by the whatever the 3.5 rupees, and that will be the present value of that 3.5 rupees that you will get 1 year from today, right? And this is a very important concept and this is what we call discounting the future cash flow. That means this cash flow is not I'm going to receive today, I'm going to receive 1 year from today or t years from today, right? And so if it is 3.5 rupees 1 year from today, then 3.5 divided by 1 plus say 0.05 is the discount rate, is the value. So it will be less than 3.5 rupees today. The present value will be little less than 3.5 rupees. Okay.
Right. And two things we get from this formula that hopefully is intuitive, obviously, that now if R goes up, the interest rate or the discount rate goes up, then the present value is going to be less, right? And the higher up in the future, you're going to get the money that is worth less in terms
Correct.
of base terms, right?
Correct.
And please keep in mind this distinction between discount factor and discount rate. You want to be careful with the terminology. So R is the discount rate, and this 1 by 1 plus R to the power t is the discount factor corresponding to year t.
Correct. Correct.
Okay, so I think now we are in the position to sum up the answer to that question, right? After having taken a long detour through time value of money and so on. So what is the price of the bond? It's basically the sum of the present values of all the future cash flows, right? So that example that we had seen that, you're going to get 3.5 in t equal to 0.5, t equal to 1, and so on. Now we can actually link all of that with the discounting to get this answer that it's not just the sum of the cash flows, you have to discount it using the discount factor, and that will give you the answer to what would be the bond price. right?
Correct. Correct. Wow, we are at the end of the first section. So I think we should take a break here probably and come back to the next video. What do you think?
I agree. So let's take a break and think about these concepts. Whereas in the next segment, we are going to think about how to take this to the computer and get some answers.
Absolutely. See you in the next video.